Have you ever had that nagging feeling that the education you got, or maybe the one your kids are getting right now, is kind of built on a set of rules that just don't apply anymore? You know that feeling that the world has totally changed, but the classroom hasn't quite caught up? Well, you are definitely not alone. That feeling is right at the heart of this huge shift that's happening in learning and in work. And we're going to break down exactly what it all means. And it's a frustration you see bubbling up just about everywhere. I mean, take this comment from a Reddit discussion. This user points out that the whole system feels more like a machine for spitting out metrics, grades, test scores, than a place where you actually learn something useful. And that just hits home for so many people who feel like the focus has become less about real understanding and more about just passing the test. But here's the thing. This isn't just a vague feeling people have. It is a documented, measurable reality. It's backed by some pretty startling numbers that show there's a real gap between what students are learning and what the modern workforce actually needs. Okay, get a load of this number. According to the Strata Education Foundation, a staggering 52% of recent four-year college graduates are underemployed within their first year. Let that sink in. That means over half of them are working in jobs that don't even require the degree they just spent 4 years and a ton of money on. They've got the piece of paper, but the skills just aren't connecting to a career. So what's going on here? Well, this whole phenomenon has a name that gets right to the heart of the problem. It's called the skills gap. It's this simple but really profound idea that jobs are evolving faster than ever, and our education programs are struggling to keep pace. It's leaving graduates without the specific practical skills that employers are absolutely desperate for. So how did we get here? Why is this gap getting wider? Well, it's not because of any one single thing. It's more like a perfect storm of these powerful forces, both from the outside world and from within the system itself, that are putting immense pressure on our traditional ways of teaching. So on the outside, you have these massive pressures. Technology is changing so incredibly fast that a skill you learn today could be obsolete in just a few years. Industry standards are always shifting. And a lot of the time, there just isn't enough teamwork between companies and universities to make sure what's being taught actually lines up with what's happening in the real world. In fact, McKinsey found that 87% of companies are already dealing with these skill shortages. But the problem is also internal. The very foundation of our education system was designed for a totally different time, the industrial era. Think about it. You've got the sage on the stage, the expert at the front of the room, lecturing to rows and rows of students who were just sitting there passively, trying to absorb facts. That model might have worked when information was hard to come by, but that is just not the world we live in anymore. And there's a modern twist that makes this even tougher. Research from cognitive science is showing that our brains themselves are being rewired. That constant stream of rapid-fire, fragmented content from our digital lives, it actually overloads our working memory. And that makes it even harder to focus during a traditional passive lecture. So the old model isn't just outdated, it's literally fighting against our modern brain chemistry. Okay, so we've got a complex, pretty deep-rooted problem here. But the good news is some really powerful solutions are starting to emerge. The first big one isn't about little tweaks here and there. It's a fundamental shift in how we learn, moving away from just passively absorbing stuff to actively engaging with it. And this brings us to a really foundational idea in modern education, Kolb's experiential learning cycle. The concept is simple, but it's also revolutionary because it completely flips that old model on its head. Instead of a one-way lecture, it turns learning into an active, continuous loop. The idea is that we learn best not by listening, but by doing. You have an experience, you reflect on it, you figure out the big takeaway, and then you try it again, but better. And the data on this approach, it's just stunning. A huge meta-analysis that looked at 225 different studies found that students in active learning environments saw their failure rates drop by 55% compared to students in those old school lectures. That's not a small improvement. That is a total game changer. It proves that when students are actively involved, they learn more deeply and they succeed way more often. The second major solution tackles a different part of the equation. It's not just about changing how we learn, but also totally rethinking what a qualification even is. This is where we see the shift toward more focused, bite-sized credentials. So, these are often called micro-credentials. Think of them as short, super targeted programs that focus on certifying a very specific in-demand skill, like, say, digital marketing analytics or AI ethics. Instead of taking years to finish, you can often knock them out in a matter of weeks or months, giving you job-ready skills with incredible speed and precision. But do employers actually care about these? You might be wondering. Well, a recent LinkedIn report found a definitive yes. 68% of employers now value skills-based certifications just as much as, and in some cases even more than, a traditional four-year degree. Why? Because they see it as direct proof that a candidate can do the job right now. I mean, when you put them side by side, the comparison is pretty stark, right? Micro-credentials are faster, they're cheaper, and they're laser-focused on what employers need right now. Now, a traditional degree gives you a fantastic foundation of broad knowledge, for sure, but these credentials offer a really agile, cost-effective way to get the specific, applicable skills that the market is demanding this very second. So, when you put these two solutions together, learning by doing and these bite-sized credentials, you start to see the outline of a completely new ecosystem for education. It's one that's way more flexible, more continuous, and much more closely tied to the real world. Of course, making these changes happen isn't easy. It's not without its challenges. As one teacher wisely pointed out on Reddit, the day-to-day realities of the classroom, we're talking large class sizes, limited resources, make it incredibly difficult to personalize learning for every single student. Shifting to these new models is going to require some serious systemic support for the educators who are on the front lines every day. And that's really the key takeaway here. The future isn't about completely replacing traditional degrees. It's about building a richer, more diverse ecosystem for learning. We're moving away from the idea of education as a one-time product you buy. Instead, we're moving toward a future where learning is a lifelong service you subscribe to, a world where a degree might be your foundation, but you continuously add new skills and credentials throughout your entire career. You see, we used to think of education as a destination, a point where you finish, you graduate, and you're done. But that model is broken. Learning is now a continuous journey. So, in a world that absolutely refuses to stand still, the most important question isn't if you'll learn, but how will you choose to learn next?